Today's reading is Mark 10:35-45, the request of James and John. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to him and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared." When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, The Healthy Leader is part 3 in our Lenten sermon series on the healthy church, healthcare for God's people. Leadership is one of the most talked about and written about topics in American life. Ever since the American Revolution, we have put great emphasis on the quality of our leaders in the military, in business, in politics, and yes, in the church. The great leaders of history were people who were not only in the right place at the right time, but they were the right person for the right time. People like George Washington and FDR and Churchill and even Steve Jobs have been the subject of many books and movies. We're fascinated with leadership. We equate leadership with success. Some of the best-selling self-help books of all time are about leadership. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People has sold over 30 million copies since it was first written in 1936. And by the way, when I was a kid, I was glad to hear that there was a famous man with the name Dale, because everyone teased me that the name of a woman, Dale Evans, was popular at the time. The wife, I sound real old by saying that, don't I? And then lately, have you seen this Progressive insurance ad that makes fun of this rather mild-mannered man named Dale at the gas pump? My wife teases me about that. I love my name, but sometimes I wish I had a stronger-sounding name like Charles or George. Hey, how about George Dale? I like that combination. And then, of course, there's Dale Earnhardt and Dale Earnhardt Jr., so I've got some macho namesakes to refer to. Anyway, get back on track here. Dale Carnegie wrote this groundbreaking book, which included a major section on leadership. And his insights sound quite contemporary still today. He suggested that good leaders begin with praise and honest appreciation. They ask questions instead of giving direct orders, and they praise every improvement. In the decades since, there have been many bestsellers on leadership, titles like In Search of Excellence and The 1-Minute Manager. Well, nowadays, TED Talks is a 21st century way of sharing ideas. On the list of most listened to TED Talks is one on leadership. The number 3 TED Talk of all time, which has been viewed over 37 million times, is How Great Leaders Inspire Action by Simon Sinek. And his insight is really quite simple. Great leaders lead from why, not from how or what. And his examples were as varied as Steve Jobs and Apple Computers and MLK and the Wright brothers. They knew why their cause or their enterprise was important. They, of course, knew what they wanted to do and how they were going to do it, but most important and rare in leadership is they knew why. Well, we've had great leaders in the church as well over the decades and centuries. Last fall, we refreshed our understanding and renewed our appreciation for Reformation leaders like Luther and Calvin. In this country, we have had many great church leaders like Harry Emerson Fosdick and Amy Semple McPherson and the recently deceased Billy Graham. We've had many church leaders who built vast empires and became wildly wealthy. And some even went completely off the rails, like Jim Jones and other cult leaders. The church has had good leaders and corrupt leaders, just like any other human institution. But the church has something that trumps all the self-help books and videos on leadership, and that is we have the Gospels. In the 4 Gospels in our New Testament and in some surviving sources outside the Bible, we have a unique model of leadership that captures all of this wisdom of the leadership gurus we read about. In the Gospels, we have the life and the teachings and the ministry of Jesus of Nazareth, a simple carpenter who walked the dusty hills of Palestine 2,000 years ago and by any measure changed the course of human history. Jesus is obviously one of the greatest leaders of all human history. He has over 1 billion followers today, which makes a few million books or videos viewed seem rather trivial, doesn't it? But to his followers, he is more than just a human leader. He is God incarnate. So perhaps it should be no surprise that the creator of the universe might know a thing or two about leadership. And like much of Jesus' message, his model of leadership is paradoxical. The true leader does not command or draw attention to him or herself. The true leader is humble and is willing to serve others, even to the point of self-sacrifice. The model is called servant leadership. In our reading that Paige read for us from Mark, we see our friends, the disciples, James and John, competing for positions of honor and leadership. They sound like people vying for positions in the White House or somewhere important. They thought leadership meant prestige and importance. They wanted glory for themselves as they asked to have places of honor next to Jesus. And Jesus just shook his head and looked at them and said, "You don't get it, do you? Did you not watch my video or read my book? You have no idea what you are talking about. If you want to be a leader in my posse, you're going to be in for some hard times." And then Jesus gave them a short TED talk on leadership. He reminded them that leadership in the world means being in charge of people. It means being able to tell others what to do and lord it over them, as he said. And they'll do what you want because they're afraid of you. But in this new community that was being formed, those who would be great needed to be servant, and whoever wanted to be first needed to take the lowest or last place. And he then offered himself as the ultimate example of this new model of leadership. He said, "For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." And as we know, his life was full of integrity. He served and did ultimately give his life for us all. His leadership model has come to be known, as we said, as servant leadership, and it's catching on as an effective model in business today as well as the church. It is a model of leadership rooted in paradox. You can't seek leadership for the honor or the power. You seek it in order to serve. A week ago Saturday, we had our training for our new deacons. The first thing we talk about in our new officer training in our church is this model of servant leadership. Our deacons and our elders and our trustees are all excellent examples of people who lead by serving. They don't do it for the pay, that's for sure, or even the prestige or the power. They consider it an honor to be chosen, because it is, but it is an honor that then becomes a responsibility. Servant leadership is the name for the kind of leadership Jesus demonstrated. But his leadership goes far beyond washing feet and healing the sick. Jesus was angry at corruption and acted on that anger by turning over the tables of the money changers in the temple. Jesus was calm when there was anxiety in the ranks, when the winds were whipping up the waves and tossing the boat around, Jesus calmly said, "Peace, be still." Jesus was wise when the situation was dangerous. He told those about to stone that woman caught in adultery that whoever was without sin could cast the first stone. Jesus was sensitive and kind when others thought he should be tough. He spent time with those on the margins of society, and he loved the children. In the midst of all that action, there was another quality in Jesus' leadership that has also gained the attention of contemporary writers. Jesus knew how to take care of himself. Jesus would go away to pray early in the morning or whenever he needed to. He would push off in a boat to get away from the crowds. Jesus practiced self-care. And there was a time when church leaders lost track of this. They thought servant leadership meant serving till you just literally dropped dead. But that is not only not healthy for the individual, it's not good for the organization and the people they lead. Leaders need time of rest and Sabbath. Leaders need time for renewal and restoration. And once again, Jesus led by example. Today we will all have a chance for a little rest and renewal. In a few moments we will come to this table. We come to the table to be served by the servant of all. We come to share in his cup. We come to be renewed in our call to serve, for we are all servant leaders in one way or another. And we all need to come and sit at the feet of the Master regularly. Coming to this table has more power to restore and inspire than the best-selling book or the most watched video. It is the table of our leader, who has again invited us as his guests. He will meet us in the bread and the cup, and then send us out to be servant leaders to a world in need. And finally, I wanted to reflect for a moment on my role as your leader here at PCMK. I strive to be a healthy leader for this healthy church. The Personnel Committee rates my performance each year on over a dozen categories, but there is really only one that matters. As the Apostle Paul wrote to his church members in Corinth, and I close with these words, "Follow me as I follow Christ." That's all that matters. Amen.